Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our forgiveness series. And this is the third series. We have one more week after this. And I am so excited to be together tonight to start to look at the practice that is so core to the Jewish forgiveness practice at this time of year, which is asking for forgiveness.
Right.
And please mute yourselves when you're not speaking. And asking for forgiveness seems so vulnerable. It's such a vulnerable thing to do. And what immediately comes to mind for me is something that I heard Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication, say, that we're afraid that we'll hear from other people the worst thing we're thinking about ourselves, that's what's scary. And that is why we have spent the last two sessions really working on self-forgiveness. Because to really do this work of teshuvah, of returning to something, and we want to be returning to something beautiful and life-enhancing and life-nourishing, right? We really want to forgive ourselves, right? So that's why we've spent so much time on those practices. So asking for forgiveness. I heard a story this morning that I want to share. So Rabbi Pauline Tamari, who was one of the rabbis of the Woodstock Jewish congregation, which in many ways is my root Jewish congregation, Rabbi Pauline of blessed memory, shared a story on a video that we watched this morning that one Elul, her brother, approached her and asked for forgiveness for something. And as Pauline told the story, she took a breath. And you could see in that breath she took that she had some stuff between she and her brother. That's how I saw it. She took a breath. Her brother's coming to her, asking for forgiveness. She took a breath and she said, "Of course I forgive you because I love you and I believe that you can change. I believe that we can all change." So that was part one of her answer. And what I get from that is that Pauline understood that when someone comes to us and asks for forgiveness, right, which means when we go to someone and ask for forgiveness, we are extending the opportunity for the other person to perform the mitzvah. Mitzvah meaning come close. We are extending an invitation to someone to step into greater intimacy with us, whether we are offering forgiveness or asking for it. So as we go through the class tonight, I really want to just hold in my heart that when I go to ask for forgiveness, which I'm strongly intending to do this week, I want to do it as an invitation to whoever I'm asking to step into a beautiful field with me, that field of Elul, that field beyond right doing and wrongdoing, to come with me into that field where we are sharing open-hearted reconnection and return. So asking for forgiveness as an invitation to enter into Rumi's field beyond right doing and wrongdoing, that field where the beautiful emanation of the divine is waiting for us. So that's part one of how I heard Rabbi Pauline's practice with her brother. And then after she said that first part, right, because I love you and I believe everyone can change. I believe you could change is what she said. Then she took another breath and she said, and I'd like us to meet together after the holidays. And I'd like to hear your plan for what you're going to do so that you don't do that again. Wow. I thought that is pure nonviolent communication. And I don't think it's a secret that I did coach her in nonviolent communication about 20 years ago. Not that I'm not saying that's where she got it from, but it's so in alignment, because what we're going to work with tonight is, what does nonviolent communication add to our skill and our practice of asking for forgiveness? And what it adds is exactly what Rabbi Pauline added: a specific, doable request to really make sure that this return is to authenticity and to meeting her needs, the needs that weren't met in whatever happened between her and her brother. So she said, can we meet? A doable request after the holiday, specific time zone, so I could hear your plan. What are you going to do, brother, so that this doesn't happen again, to protect her from what happened? So may we dedicate this session tonight to Rabbi Pauline Tamari and so many of the blessed ones who are leaving us all the time, that they're still here and they're still shining their light on us through the miracles of Zoom, which is how that came down. So as I've been saying, the traditional Jewish forgiveness practice for this month of Elul, as I'm coming to understand it, values asking for forgiveness as much as offering our forgiveness. That's a real deep thing there. Right. And it took me to many places. It took me to a teaching from Thich Nhat Hanh, and some of my friends from the Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha are here with us. That giving and receiving are, in his words, empty. In other words, they're not inherently separate. So giving forgiveness, receiving forgiveness, offering forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, it's all the same, because what it's doing is bringing us into an energy that we call forgiveness, an energy where our hearts are open. There's a level in which it doesn't matter how we get there, because the prize is getting there, is getting to this open-hearted place where we can teshuvah, where we can return to something familiar and brand new, right? So that's called, in Buddhism, it's called the emptiness of giving and receiving. In nonviolent communication, it's called stepping into the universal energy of needs. And we all hopefully have printed out those needs lists. I'm emailing every week, print out the list, print out the list. Those are these universal life energies, these universal energies that life needs to sustain itself. So when I invite someone to forgive me, I want to do it from that place of, I really trust that what I'm doing is creating a unified field where we're both going to bring more empathy and compassion and connection into the world. And if the person says no, that's okay. Because I'm not making a demand. I'm just making an invitation. And that I can make that invitation, that's going to bring me into the flow. So I guess what I'm suggesting is that we find ways of doing this where the vulnerability isn't so scary.
Mm. Mm.
And let's do it to parts of ourselves also, right? Like in the internal family system practice that Karen and I have been emailing about. There are parts of ourselves. I mean, today I did something I'm a little shaky about. My intention was okay, but I don't know. I just want to extend forgiveness to that part of myself. You know, it was just struggling in that moment. And I want to surround all parts of myself with compassion and empathy and that kind of forgiveness. So, as I said, Rabbi Pauline got very specific in her request with her brother, right? And I want to suggest that when we do teshuvah, this practice of forgiveness, invitation to return during Elul, it's a time to get very specific. I learned today in another teaching that in the Jewish Hebrew calendar, Jewish calendar, this teshuvah, this returning to return, I don't know, Yael, asking to return is something, asking for forgiveness is something we do every night. Well, I already knew that, but I didn't put it together with the teshuvah of Elul. So every night in traditional Jewish practice, before you go to sleep, you do a teshuvah, a return, you ask for forgiveness. And the bedtime shema, it's what it's called. What it says is very general, beautiful and general. May anyone I have harmed intentionally or unintentionally forgive me. And part of the idea is that if I die in my sleep, which to some may be the preferred way to go, I'll be clear. The teshuvah, the forgiveness practice we do now during Elul is different. It is much more specific. So what I want to suggest is that we take on a practice this week of think of one person and again, don't pick the hardest person in your life. Pick the doorman who you forgot his birthday or something like that. And ask for forgiveness very specifically. I want to just ask for your forgiveness that I forgot your birthday. Just try it out on that level. If you want to do something more vulnerable, which I do, I want to think about what is the specific action or inaction or words that I spoke or didn't speak that I want to ask for forgiveness for. And I was thinking, well, how do I know what to ask for forgiveness for? And the answer that came to me is, I know by listening deeply to the other person. By sitting, if it's someone I'm in relationship with, so I'm thinking of my two daughters right now. Each of them has said something to me in the last month, kind of a sideways, yeah, Mom, you didn't do that. So I thought of two things that obviously are important to them because they brought it up in that sort of sideways ways. So I want to go to them and say, I would like you to forgive me for that. And what I want to put this together with is a practice that I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh, my Buddhist teacher, that he presented to us and called 3 days of beginning anew. And this is the part 2 in Rabbi Pauline's practice with her brother. Well, it's a reverse because he was asking her for forgiveness. But when I go to ask someone for forgiveness, I want to spend 3 days ahead of time in meditation. This is what Thich Nhat Hanh had us do. I was with him for a 3-month retreat. So we really had 3 days to do this. So the first day, is to really meditate on the situation. What happened between me and this other person? And to write a letter to them that I'm never going to mail. Because I'm going to write the letter and then I'm going to meditate on the letter and keep meditating until I see something new in the situation. Until I find a new perspective. So I'm looking at the situation with curiosity. And then on the second day, I'm going to meditate on what was the impact on them. Because remember, this is a practice. I'm asking someone else for forgiveness. I'm asking someone, I'm making the choice. There's no should. I guess in Judaism, there's a little bit of a should, but here in this brand of neo-Hasidic Judaism, no shoulds. I'm asking someone else to forgive me. So step 2 is I'm going to think of, what do I understand about the impact on them of what I did or didn't do? That's going to help me understand the weight of my asking for forgiveness. And then on day 3, I'm going to go to them and say, you know, that thing that happened between us, I've been thinking about it for 3 days because I so value our relationship. And what I've seen is that when I did that, it impacted you in a way that I don't think I really understood. So I want to ask your forgiveness for that. And I want to tell you, so this is day 3, what is my plan for restorative justice? So I really see this asking for forgiveness as a restorative justice practice. I want to put forward, this is what I'm thinking I want to do to restore things between us. And then I ask, how is this for you? Did I get what was important to you? Is what I'm proposing to do really getting it? So I'm excited to try this practice. I have to say I'm very blessed because I have practiced nonviolent communication with my daughters for 20 years. And they both know enough nonviolent communication to kind of go beyond the lingo now, which wasn't the case in the beginning. So, but I'm really excited to do this practice. So where I want to go next, but before that, we can have some space for questions and comments, is a review of what is wonderful about forgiveness. Because I think, how do we get up the courage to be vulnerable, to express our vulnerability? How do we really water the seeds of trust that we really are asking someone to enter into a beautiful field with us if we offer forgiveness or ask for forgiveness, right? So I want us to go over in the class tonight, what are some of the fruits of forgiveness that we may receive? So before that, just want to open the floor to questions and comments, and you can unmute yourselves and share.
I have a question. So I'm listening to your whole, soliloquy there, and it's really nice. And there are parts of it that, I'm really grasping, and then some of the farther parts, I see how hard they would be, let's put it that way. And then toward the end, it occurred to me something just was not registering quite right. And then at the end, it occurred to me that I'm very big on going to people and say, I apologize for whatever, and thank God, mostly little things and, rabbi things. And I apologize. I didn't have time to talk to you at the Oneg last night. Um, but that's the phrase I use. And I never, it's entirely not part of my vocabulary to say, I ask, I'm asking you to forgive me for this. And I can imagine lots of differences between the two, but it really just kind of rang with me just now.
Rabbi Michael, I thought of the same thing today. Like, what is the power in the words, I'd like to ask for your forgiveness? There is something.
It's different. It really is different, although that had never crossed my mind before.
Well, I think part of it is it's power sharing. So one of the principles of nonviolent communication, or one of the real inquiries, is how do we work with power? So when I go to someone and I say, I apologize, it's all me. It's all,
Right.
It's coming from me, and, and
Right.
I'm not opposed to that. I'm
Right. I
just
mean,
saying,
and you can
but when
accept my apology or not, but we're kind of done then.
yeah, but when I ask someone else, would you forgive me? That's power sharing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's very interesting.
yeah, I'm in this, getting all kinds of new downloads like all day, and so my invitation is, let's try it. Let's just try it and then see. Right? This is all an investigation. Yeah. Thank you.
Roberta,
Yeah.
hi. To me, the intention and the words, I'd like to ask for your forgiveness, sounds like it's only for really big things.
Hmm.
I mean, it's powerful.
Mhm.
And if I showed up late for this workshop,
Mhm.
it would seem so disproportionate for me to say, Roberta, I'd like to ask for your forgiveness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so interesting, Karen. And I'm so grateful for this complete investigation that we're doing. Two things come up to me. One is that the proportionality you're talking about is, yeah, it's almost as if you're putting some burden on me if it's, too big, too much. So that's really interesting. And what that leads me to is a core principle of nonviolent communication that I think is just a game changer, has been for me, and I bet it has been for Karen and others on the call who are really into NVC, is the distinction between the strategies, the ways in which we speak and act, and the needs we want to meet. So the distinction between the needs and the strategies we use to employ the needs. So forgiveness is a strategy, right? It's a choice of action and words. And we want to be clear, well, what are the needs we want to meet by using the words forgiveness? So if the need is power sharing, yeah, maybe that is too big for coming 5 minutes late. Maybe not. We don't know, right? But I'm just saying that I think what Karen is adding with her question is really important to put into our skill bag. that choosing to forgive, choosing to not forgive. How do I personally evaluate what I want to do? Well, as an NVC practitioner, I evaluate it by looking at that list of needs and figuring out what needs do I want to meet. Will offering forgiveness or asking for forgiveness meet those needs? What needs won't be met if I do that? And those are some of the most important questions people have been bringing up these 3 weeks, right? Well, you know, if I forgive and I'm letting go of any sense of accountability, and that's really important to me, right? So if the need I want to meet is accountability, I may not choose to use those words, I forgive, right? So those are the 2 places your comment just took me, Karen, and I appreciate them.
Is it okay if I?
Go ahead.
Right. So if I do or don't do something that causes some degree of not feeling good in the other person. So I've already done that. And then I'm asking them for something for me. And it, no, it just seems like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. And
That it's all for me.
well, and that's why I began the class tonight by, I think, really appreciating that in Judaism, right, the forgiveness practice is never just for you, right? Asking someone to forgive me is really offering them the opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah of teshuvah. It's really inviting someone to step into the field where we can have direct transmission from the divine, right? Because, and that's why I want to get into what are the needs that are met by forgiveness. Let's just go there, because I think that's also going to speak directly to what you're saying, and I think it's really important. And I started writing out this week, reviewing why we might want to step into the energy of forgiveness. Okay. From a nonviolent communication decision-making point of view, the way I put the inquiry is, why would I choose forgiveness? I really want it to be a choice. I make that choice because there are important needs, values, things that are really important to me, energies that are important to me, that I think forgiving will bring forth into the world. So I look at the needs that I want to meet in choosing forgiveness as what I want more of in the world. That's not for me. I mean, of course it's for me, but it's not only for me. Compassion, empathy. This is what I want more of in the world. Honesty, closeness, right? I agree, Karen. I only want to do this practice if I feel authentically, deeply authentically, that engaging in this practice is going to bring into the world more of what I want there to be in the world. So it's way beyond you or me, right? And it is for me. So it's both. I mean, this is such a practice in non-duality. And it's such a specific earth-born practice in non-duality, because it's also for me. Because I don't want to do this for you. I don't want to pretend that I'm making choices to do things for you. It's because I want to bring more of certain energies and values and experiences into the world. So in that sense, it is for me. Just chew on it. It's we can't get this with just the left brain, right? We can't get this just intellectually. It just so again, needs are what we want more of in the world, in our lives, in our relationships, in the relationship between me and this other person that I'm going to, right? So as I said before, why choose forgiveness? And I'm just doing a little review. Forgiveness is a strategy. I'm going to choose that strategy if there are needs I want to meet. Now, I may just want right now to meet the need for discovery and curiosity. What's going to happen if I go to someone and say, would you forgive me for this? That's a need, right? Discovery, learning. And when I'm making the discernment about whether or not to do that, I also want to consider what is the impact, or what could be the impact, or what would be the impact on the other person. Meaning, maybe what needs wouldn't be met. So if it's something little and I'm going with this great big, spiritual practice, maybe it would put too much of a burden on someone. So in that case, there's unmet needs. So I don't want to do it. So this is sort of how I use NVC, moment to moment, and making choices. What are the needs I want to meet by speaking out, right? I mean, you walk around New York City and there's 20 things to speak out about, needs I'd want to meet, needs that I don't think would be met. And I weigh them and I make a decision. And as we practiced last week, I might have to mourn for myself the needs that I'm not meeting in whatever I choose, to speak out, to not speak out. I mean, life is messy. So none of this is a prescription for smooth sailing. I think it's a prescription for growth. And that's an important need for me. I think growth is a need. So here's just some of what I came up with about needs met when I choose forgiveness. I want to forgive, to free myself from the karma of something that happened. So freedom. That's a big need. And I want to, again, look, in this particular situation, will asking or offering forgiveness bring me that kind of a freedom? I won't be thinking about it all the time, so I'll be more focused. I'll breathe deeper. I'll feel more peaceful. I'll feel less anxious. I'll feel calm. What are the ways that offering forgiveness or asking for forgiveness will bring me freedom? Related to that, to give myself the opportunity to focus on self-awareness. When my consciousness is focused on somebody else did something wrong, that's a distraction from me doing my own work, I think. And not only my own work, for me having my consciousness in the wonderful things of life, or on other aspects of myself. So it's a freedom, right? A freedom from distraction, a freedom to focus on self-awareness and growth, a freedom to focus on what I love. I'm choosing forgiveness to just try and clear the air, at least do it for myself, clearing the air, so I could move on and incline my consciousness to the beauty that's all around, instead of thinking about that thing all the time. Forgiveness, I think, can really clear the way for me to function in greater awareness. Because for me, when I'm carrying something like a knot in me, it's a heaviness. And very often thoughts just spin off. So very often I want to do forgiveness so that I could deepen my awareness practice. Now, of course, I could also be aware of that, there's this knot in me. So it goes both ways. In other words, forgiving, not forgiving, these are strategies, right? And we can actually meet the same needs sometimes with both strategies. Forgiveness can empower me and release me from experiencing myself as a victim. That's a big one for me.
Can you give a specific example of that?
Yes. I a number of years ago was visiting, I might have spoken about this in the first class, I'm not sure. I was visiting a Palestinian woman friend and colleague of mine. And she was telling me about the incredible hardships she's facing living in Israel. She's from the West Bank, and she's from a wealthy family in the West Bank where, she had a car and she could drive, for example, visit her parents whenever she wanted to. Now she's living in Israel because she married a Palestinian who's an Israeli citizen, a doctor, and they live in Israel where he's a doctor. He's a doctor in Haifa. And she's not allowed to drive because she's not an Israeli citizen. She's not allowed to go to the West Bank and visit her parents because the border's closed. She said to me, but I'm not a victim. These things are happening to me. These things are causing deep harm and stress. I'm not a victim. I was like, wow. So that's an example. Forgiveness, I think, can be a way of embracing vulnerability, especially asking for forgiveness. Maybe not especially, but certainly asking for forgiveness. And for me, the more I can fortify myself to express my vulnerability, the more I'm in my power, the less I have to fear. I think that's what my Palestinian friend was saying. Right? I'm in my strength, and she is. She's become an international teacher since then. I mean, she's so in her power. So I value forgiveness as a door to living in the energy of compassion, ease, and empathy. Those are the energies I trust and want more of in the world. Those are the energies that I trust can heal the violence in the world. So I'm sharing all this not to say you should forgive, because that's a violence. I'm sharing all this so that we can all do our practice of really imagining what could forgiveness give to me, so that when I try it out, it's from a place of empowerment. If I go to ask someone for forgiveness, I'm asking them to enter this beautiful field. It's an invitation to life. Right? So I've been doing this for 2 days, like type it out, go do something else. I think of another amazing thing that forgiveness could bring me, and I type it out again. And as I'm doing this practice of really connecting with what is the gift to me of forgiveness, I'm feeling the energy rising in me to live this as a way of practice. So that's why I'm sharing this. I really don't want anybody here a should, because there are places where I absolutely feel fine making the choice to not forgive. It all depends on the needs I want to meet, right? Could be safety, honesty, not ready, not going to do it. And I'll just finish this piece and then open it up again with a quote from Valerie Kaur, who is a Sikh American kind of inspirational teacher. She also happens to be a lawyer and really beautiful woman. She said, and I think this applies to forgiveness. Well, first I'll start with my own words. Forgiveness opens the opportunity to get closer to the other person. And by the way, also to God, if you're doing a practice in Elul and the something in the God language is what you want to come closer to, right? And also to yourself. Forgiveness opens the opportunity to get closer. It opens the opportunity to intimacy, including to the parts of ourselves we have exiled. When we release the judgments, we can see something else, right? Judgments take a lot of space. They're thoughts, and they manifest as the world, right? So when we can forgive whatever the thoughts are spinning about, right? We're clearing a space for a new intimacy to see something new. In the period of Elul in Judaism, it's to return to see the divinity that's always with us. And I think the metaphors are powerful for whatever your belief system is. So Valerie Kaur writes, the most critical part of listening is asking what is at stake for the other person. I try to understand what matters to them, not what I think matters. Sometimes I start to lose myself in their story. As soon as I notice feeling unmoored, I try to pull myself back into my body. So she's speaking, the last part I think about, a danger of all of this is that you can totally lose yourself and your own authentic values and experiences. So when we're doing this forgiveness practice, when we're offering empathy and compassion, right, we want to stay grounded in our body so that we're not losing connection to ourself. In fact, so that the compassion, the empathy, the forgiveness is coming deeply from within ourselves. And we want to tune in to what is at stake for the other person. What is their experience? So keep checking in. It's just tracking back to what Karen shared before. We could just always ask, is this too heavy for you? Easy question. And make sure you trust. If somebody goes, oh, no problem, make sure you trust that. Right. And next week, our last week, we're going to work on what does it mean to step into what is at stake for the other person? What was at stake for the other person when what I'm holding against them or about them, or what I'm holding that's between us, when that happened, what was at stake for them? So I know a lot of words. Just want to open up again. Comments, questions, insights.
I'm kind of understanding what you're saying as being, kind of a vision of how we really should all talk to each other. And in kind of a rarefied world where we wouldn't do just terrible things to each other, but anyway, if we were a rarefied world where we still did terrible things to each other, and there were like these big issues of forgiveness, I think it's a really beautiful kind of system and way to think about it. What I would like to understand better is, okay, maybe nobody in this world, or maybe I'm being pessimistic, and maybe I know myself anyway, it's not going to happen like that consistently for me, maybe forever, not right now. But I would like to bring some of that into the more modest or less intense interactions that happen all the time. If I was estranged from my brother and we had this long history and we could never get it right, and this would be a great lesson, and I could go to him in a different way, learning and talking to you tonight in the last couple of weeks. It really is. But most of my interactions aren't like that, and most of the people who I feel like I owe forgiveness to, or maybe I feel like they should forgive me for something, or whatever. It's like, it's very modest stuff. It's people that I have a relationship with, but not, a super intimate relationship. And I'd love some hints about how to like bring it down a little bit. And that would help maybe get to the more intense stuff more frequently if I knew how to do it as a beginner. How do I do that as a beginner? You're an expert. You've thought a lot about this.
I've thought a lot about this. I would not call myself an expert. So the few pointers that I think could be useful in big ones and little ones. Okay. And there's an expression in Buddhism, no big, no little. So sort of holding that too, would be to let the person know what need of yours, which includes what you want more of for everyone in the world, what need of yours you're wanting to meet by asking for forgiveness. So can you give us an example of something, one of these day-to-day things?
Well, I could see asking. It would be easier for me in the practical world and my own particularity to say, I feel like I need to ask you forgiveness for something because, I really felt like I cut you off in that conversation or something. And that would be easier for me to say somehow than I'm asking you forgiveness.
Yeah. The words, or whatever words you want to use. What I'd like to suggest you try adding to what you just said is the reason why it's important to you. Why does cutting someone off, what is not in alignment with your life values about that? And the heart of nonviolent communication is to practice connecting with people beyond the strategy cutting off, not cutting off, right? To connect with people on the level of the universal human need, the universal life need that you want to meet, right? So just forget about the other person right now. Why is it important to you to not cut people off?
Well, sometimes, I mean, if the truth be told, sometimes I really want to hear what they have to say. And sometimes I need them to feel like I'm listening, whether I really care that much about what they're saying or not.
Okay. And what is wonderful for you when people have the experience that you're listening to them?
Well, it forms of connection, forms a connection that I think has value in itself.
Okay, that's the need. Again, look on that sheet. So you might want to go to somebody and say, I just want you to know, I really regret that I cut you off because I really value the kind of connection that would come from when we listen to each other. Or I lost your, what were your exact words? Do you remember?
I don't know, that kind, that kind of connection I think is a value in itself.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
want to have that with you.
Right. Okay. So let's do a survey of the people on the call. Like everybody, you see that little reaction button. How many people would enjoy hearing an apology or a request for forgiveness or whatever, or a come to Jesus moment, excuse the pun. That includes the last piece that Michael just said.
Can you repeat the last piece?
Yeah.
So presumably I would say something like, I feel like I owe you an apology. I feel like I want to ask your forgiveness for having been kind of short with you the other day, because it really kind of prevented us from making a kind of connection that I think is valuable for both of us and in itself.
That's good.
What's good about it, Karen? Say more.
Well, it's you're not just asking me for something to give to you, you're also telling me why it's important to you. And I find that very wonderful. It's like, oh, are things that I say important to you? That's great.
Yeah, Elle, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I really liked how you broke it down into two sentences. When you first stated, I really regret, and then with a second sentence, so I want to ask your forgiveness, because I think it would give the listener a chance to sort of process first, or even to remember what went wrong before they have to think about the fact that they're being asked for forgiveness. I just feel like it would, if you did it all in one sentence and the forgiveness part precedes what you're asking for forgiveness for, I feel like the listener, if they're not refreshed on the subject, that it could be even confusing.
I see that, like, sort of
It's almost
overwhelming
like
to them.
putting the
All
cart
of
before
us,
the horse.
it's kind of overwhelming to them. All of a sudden, I mean, I'm using these big words before I've even said what I think I might have done wrong.
Right. Yeah. I think it would be easier to consider it if you heard it in that order. That's all. I like that, those two sentences separately.
Well, it was kind of by accident, but.
Stacy, do you want to share what you wrote? You have to unmute yourself.
I saw. I said that, yeah, that saying that you value the connection helps to satisfy the other person's need to be valued. Mentioning that you value the connection. So it's well, a very positive feedback loop.
So putting together what Yael shared and what Stacy and Karen shared to maybe make one piece, I really regret that I cut you off the other day, because I really would value us, having this conversation where there's back and forth and we're learning and hearing from each other, however you want to flesh that out. And then after you make that connection, then asking for forgiveness. I love that. Yeah. And another.
That feels more doable, going back to my original question, it definitely feels more doable thinking about it that way.
What could you say a little more about why that's more doable?
Well, it's also kind of explaining, so a lot of circumstances, the person who I feel I've wronged, it never really even occurred to them that I wronged them. We're an Oneg Shabbat and I have to talk to everybody, and they get that, and to kind of trivialize an example, but something, you recognize. So if I come back, it explains why I thought that I really did something wrong. So it's less out of the blue. And so it seems to me more like it may be after the moment, but it's getting back to that moment. And somehow that seems more plausible for me.
Okay. I really enjoy separating it, because for me, I don't hear I did something wrong. I hear a beautiful regret about what I would like. And I much prefer to get that from someone else, because if somebody comes to me and they're apologizing because they're telling me they did something wrong, I'm immediately going to be like, no, you're okay. Oh, no, I don't want to be anybody's police. I don't, you know what I mean? To me, that's like the heavy burden. So this is something I think is also at the core of nonviolent communication, that when we express regrets, it's because there's this beautiful energy that I want more of in the world that didn't happen when I did that. So it's not like I wronged you or I did something wrong. It's that I'm mourning, like, look what I missed. I personally like to take right doing and wrongdoing out of the equation. And then one more thing is, I think the way you're talking about it now is you're creating that relationship that you want, because you're revealing more about yourself. The reason I regret this is because this is what's important to me. This is the world I'm going for. And I think whether you're a rabbi or, anybody else, so that people are yearning to taste each other's experience a little bit, right? There's so much loneliness in our world. So it's revealing more.
Roberta, you also just brought us back to the nuance of the Hebrew word for sin, meaning missing the mark rather than right and wrong.
Right.
And I think also when you reveal what's in it for you, like why is it important to you to forgive or to ask for forgiveness, you're revealing your motives. And I think that sets people at ease. Because I think a lot of people, if they're not well versed in this, if they're not necessarily ready to meet you, they might be suspicious of your motivations. Like, well, why are you doing this? What do you want from me? And if you reveal that up front, I think it helps put people at ease, and it lends some authenticity to your request.
Yes. And puts the, right, it's like you're not leaving somebody with hanging, like, what do they want from me? You know, am I
Right.
responsible
I
or
mean,
getting defensive, or do I have to take care of them? Right? You're taking
yeah.
care of yourself.
I mean, in the past, when I've tried to apologize, most people completely ignore it or just slam the door. Like they don't want to, they don't want to hear it. They don't even want the emotional confrontation. And it's usually not accepted and not even responded to. But, you know, maybe my approach has been flawed. I don't know. It's, you know, as, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I'm looking at the screen. Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. As you said, this is all sounds like it could take place in a rarefied world, but in the real world, it's very hard to put into practice, but it still seems really worth striving toward and contemplating.
It's our opportunity to put ourselves in that energy.
Right.
So, you know, there's a level in which whatever the response is, we've brought ourselves into the energy we want in the world.
Yeah. That's hard though, when you don't get the response you want.
Yeah.
Or if you feel, I have felt in the past that I've made people feel worse by
Yes.
apologizing to them because I've brought up this icky thing that they really don't want to think about or go near.
Yes.
You know, and I almost feel like it's made them retreat further away because
Yeah.
now they think of me as someone who's like, you know, confrontative.
Right.
And again, this might have been my use of language, that's possible, but it's pretty scary.
Yeah. I want to really connect with, I do really connect with the pain of ignoring when apologies are ignored. And I've noticed that in myself. You know, somebody will apologize and I'll just sort of whoosh, go over it. And I think it's because, I think there's a lot of reasons, but one is because I don't want to, I have this thought that I'm going to make the other person feel worse. So you just kind of whoosh over it. And so then it's an incomplete gift, right? We want to look at apologies. I want to look at apologies as a gift. Someone's offering me a gift. What is the gift? And, you know, I know the pain of not having a gift accepted or having a gift not acknowledged, a gift ignored. So I really want to think of it as a gift. And maybe something we want to add to our tool bag is, you know, I want to give you an apology and I'd really love for you to receive it as a gift. You know, I mean, we have to start communicating what we want. This is like core teaching of nonviolent communication. I remember Marshall saying at a training once, which, okay, put aside thoughts of like privilege and status in the real world, but spiritually, he was saying, people don't get what they want because they don't know how to ask for what they want. And there's a lot of truth to that. So this is an example. If I'm going to give an apology, let me preface it by asking how I would like it to be received. And the companion to that is what we were just going over, I think, with Michael, and I hope it's really been fruitful, I think, for all of us, that I want to say why it's important to me. You know, why the way I showed up, the reason I'm regretting this is because this is what's important to me. And what I didn't help me access that. So you're really giving a lot of gifts in that. So, and again, you know, this is a life training. So just try it out. And I really encourage people not to start with the hardest cases in your life. So
Mhm.
Does anybody else have a different kind of an example that we could work with about asking for forgiveness?
Well, we may not want to roll the clock back because I missed the first session. But I am very interested in self-forgiveness. But maybe I should just watch the first session.
Well, what I'm willing to try right now, if you are, is, and again, this could be very intimate, so you may not want to do this, but asking yourself for forgiveness, and let's see where it goes. I mean, I'm game if you are open to working so intimately.
Well, the first thing that came up was, it's not 100% accurate, but it's too late. It's like wanting to go back and have things be different than they were.
Can you
And
come up
I
with
was just,
a really specific, I want to forgive myself for, what was one thing in the past
uh,
you want to go back to and shift or something?
okay, well, it was more than one thing. So,
Just like there's more than one person, of course.
right. But
But-
it has to do with not taking risks professionally.
Okay, so go ahead and say, Karen, I want to ask for your forgiveness for not giving that TEDx talk I was invited to give. I have that one twice.
But it's not too late.
Anyway,
Okay, so my internal response is kind of vacillates between self-compassion and
wait, I didn't hear you do
ask.
the ask,
The
as they
the
say.
ask. And so what would that be?
Let's hear you ask yourself for forgiveness for something really specific that you didn't do, that you're thinking of would have been a risk
Uh-huh.
in that would have moved your professional life to another level.
So I'm asking forgiveness for not building on the extraordinarily precious week with Joanna Macy in a training. Uh, to
So can I ask you to share what would have been wonderful if you would have built on it and it would have come to fruition? What would have been wonderful for you about that?
that I would be contributing in very significant ways to I think how people think about how they live.
Something wonderful and precious and amazing that would have happened.
Yeah. Oh no.
How does it feel to forgive yourself for that?
Wait, can you, I just lost the picture completely. Wait a minute. Oh, Roberta, I'm so sorry.
Well, that's
Um,
okay. We see your picture.
Okay, I can't see anybody, but I will.
We hear you.
res-
We hear you clearly.
Um,
How does it feel to
I
really
don't,
connect with what would have been so beautiful and powerful and meaningful if you had done that, to connect with that and then forgive yourself that you didn't do it?
well, I feel grief and I don't feel that I am forgiving myself.
Okay.
So that's, I guess, raises the question of intention.
So before we go there, can I say, so one way of looking at this that I just want to offer, because it's sort of the straight NVC way, right, is so the needs that weren't met are just so huge that you're not ready to forgive, right? The needs for contribution.
Yeah. I mean, what I just realized was that it's very important, actually, that in all those situations like that in my life, of which there were many, I think I would have to really grieve before I could do anything else.
Yes. So I would really honor that. So mourning, MOURN, right? Doing this practice of mourning the needs you didn't meet. And which is, this is Joanna Macy's work, I mean, right? I mean, really grieving is part of it.
Yeah.
So grief does fit in, of course, to asking for forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know, we might say, I feel real grief about that. And I still want to emphasize, if you're doing it to another person, to add, because what's important to me is, otherwise they're going to feel like you're putting the responsibility on them. And I think that's a big reason why we gloss over apology, or we hold back from even doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So. So I'm wondering if anyone here has done a practice of asking anyone else for forgiveness during this or other Eluls, or in general.
I have.
Do you want to share about that?
Oh, I wrote a letter to my ex-husband, and in the spirit of Yom Kippur 2 years ago, and he completely ignored it. He didn't respond at all.
So what response did you ask for?
I don't remember, Roberta. I'm sorry. It was 2 years ago. I probably, as Michael said, I probably just said, I apologize. I probably just communicated a blanket apology for things went wrong, things, you know, for my share of wrong, of whatever went wrong in our marriage. We've been divorced for over 20 years. So.
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways to go, right? When we share something vulnerably and we're met with silence.
Mm-hmm.
One way is to meditate on what, and this is a little bit of getting into what we're doing next week. What needs is the other person meeting by remaining silent? What needs do I think they're meeting by remaining silent? And again, by needs, I'm not talking about these negative judgments like, controlling me, punishing me, being stupid, no. I'm talking about what are the life-sustaining energies that they are inviting to themselves by not engaging. Because
Okay,
people-
do you want me to answer that question?
well, let me just say a little more about it, because the choice to remain silent, like the choice to speak, it's all attempts to invite to ourselves, when we make those choices, some life-sustaining, life-supporting energy. And when I am faced with silence and it's painful for me, I am familiar with this. One choice of a response I might make is to go, okay, I know that person, if I know them. I think they're meeting their need for choice and autonomy by not responding to me. Or I wonder, I want to be curious. We talked a lot about curiosity, especially in the first week. I wonder if they're meeting their need for freedom and space. I want to get curious about whatever response I get, and get curious until I could really connect with some energy that is one that's I experience myself as life-sustaining and life-enhancing. And then I'm at another choice point. I might either choose to go, okay, I'm cool, or right again. I noticed I didn't hear from you. I'm just curious if, you're just choosing space, autonomy, peace, and that's why you're not responding. You make a guess. This is called an empathy guess in nonviolent communication. So from your curiosity and from a real sense of, is this the beautiful need of yours you're trying to meet? You try again. Because what you're doing is what's called dogging for your needs. So like when a dog, I know you're a big dog person, I believe, right? Yeah. When a dog wants you to pet him or her, you swipe them away, right? They don't take no for an answer. So Marshall Rosenberg called what I'm sharing dogging for your needs. You go back again and you ask, you make an empathy guess. So is it that you're not responding because you'd really rather not have any contact with me? And that's to meet your need, right? For understanding or for connection, or maybe for some kind of, at least being seen, at least knowing that your message was received. How's that, Yael?
I think he would completely ignore that question, and that ignoring my missive is his answer.
Okay.
I think his need is to not reopen the wound.
Beautiful. So
that's the nicest way I can put it.
Okay, so let's just say that's a shift, what you just said, from he ignored it. That's a massive shift you just made. Oh,
I had something much more judgmental than that in mind.
What?
I had something much more judgmental than that in mind.
Yeah. But I think we're getting the general practice, and I'm glad you brought that up, that because if we're going to put our vulnerability out there and offer forgiveness or ask for forgiveness, we don't know how we're going to be received. So when we get a silence or eyes glaze over, these are all choice points for us. And we want to, as much as we can, carry with us, the principles and understanding from different practices that are meaningful to us. So, for me as a practitioner of NVC, I always want to remind myself, whatever anyone's doing or saying, it's an attempt to meet some needs. Thich Nhat Hanh says, whatever anyone is doing, they're doing because they think it will alleviate their suffering. That's a beautiful heart-opening reminder. And by the way, that's the one I use, Karen, with Trump. Because Karen and I wasn't sure Karen was going to bring up forgiving Trump, which I'm not advocating, but I'm just saying how I work with my heart on the big ones. It's by reminding myself, whatever, and I could see it so clearly in Trump. Sorry, I'm making a face. I'm not really walking my talk when I make that face, but I look at him and I see suffering. And I see whatever he's doing it because he thinks it's going to alleviate his suffering.
Can I ask you a
That doesn't
question?
mean I agree with anything he's doing. However, it just feels better for me to see it that way. So that's an example of doing it for me. And it certainly helps if I'm engaging with his followers.
So in words that I've often kind of used to myself, it sounds like what we're after here is always kind of make the best possible interpretation of the other person's motives, just as that habit, rather than assuming they're doing it strictly to punish me or strictly to be contrary or strictly to be anything. They've got a reason that's a good reason for them. And I sort of have to give them credit for having that reason that's good for them.
Yeah, and just to kind of tie that in our last few minutes, if someone wants to punish me, let's say, because there are people who believe in punishment. There are people who probably believe that I should be punished because I support abortion, whatever, right? I could still do radical acceptance. That is a fact that exists. And they're doing that because they think it's going to alleviate their own suffering. And that's a case where they're doing it because they think it's going to alleviate a lot of suffering, actually, right?
Roberta, I 100% understand and believe that no matter what anybody is doing, I happen to believe that it's because of especially early childhood parenting, and maybe if we believe in lifetimes. But the consequences, the consequences of that suffering, like how do we deal with not reacting to that?
I want us to react to that. Number one, by doing whatever we can to prevent harm. However, for me, as a proponent of nonviolence, preventing harm stops at punishment. Because I want a world that finds other ways to create communal society and change.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just to, in the last 2 minutes, to again wind it up, because this is Elul, right? And this is a forgiveness practice that comes down from thousands of years of rabbis. The whole purpose of this practice, as I understand it, really is so that we can all connect with our shared original nature, right? The oneness of our original nature. So the more we can find ways of doing that in our own hearts, right, the more we are enlarging that field. And I think that's of tremendous value and comfort. So, so just the practice for this week, if your game is write out a little script and try it out. I'm not gonna, grade your, but let's try it. Asking for forgiveness. And then next week in our last class, we'll work on coming to a place of forgiveness for the other person. And then we'll go off post class to try and do that. And my next online class is going to be on a new take on Sukkot that I have. And it's just going to be a one evening in the middle, a 2-hour class. The theme is going to be something like after the ecstasy, the laundry. So thank you so much, everyone. It's great to be together. And I love just the emails I get from people, how you're doing this, your questions, really, it's just bringing that energy in my practice, just moment to moment. So thank you all.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.